I mean, I watch all the games. I have to. It's my job. I watch them. I do these interviews. I like the players. Like, I like everyone involved. I like the production. I like the casters. I think the casting, even though they can get dunked on a lot by, Reddit and social media, I do think the casting in North America is quite good. And I think the personalities like Mark Z and Crowley are smart, and they actually do provide good analysis. But God, LCS is so like it's such it just feels like we're watching a rerun of a rerun, not even a good rerun. It seems like we're going home and watching a good rerun of Dexter's Laboratory. We're watching a rerun of a boring show that no one cared about 2 years ago. And it feels like we're just on the same track that we were on last year, where LCS went to the Worlds and no team made past the group stages. And it starts from the production down, right? Where the production is very stale. It wants to be that Sports Center. I mean, we're ESPN. We know how to do a professional, TV like quality for MLB and NFL and all that. And it isn't fitting right with the fans. And LEC was in a very similar situation. Well, the European LCS a few years ago, and they rebranded. And I like some of the stuff they do in terms of production, but just from the top down, it just feels like we're watching the same stuff over and over and over again. And especially when you have teams like FlyQuest and Team Liquid, who this is not their fault at all. Take wins where you can get them, make it to playoffs, make it to Worlds, but they're playing the same old, which just slowly ramp up. We'll get to 6 items. We'll play around Baron. We'll hope some team throws around Baron. Oh man, Aphelios, let's roll our faces against the keyboard and just win the game. And it just there's just nothing exciting. The most exciting thing about LCS was Cloud9, right? That was the huge narrative. Like, oh man, Cloud9, the greatest team of all time. I talked about that so much in the spring because that's the only thing I could hang my hat on is like, oh man, this team is historically good. Even that now is tarnished. I'm not saying Cloud9 isn't arguably one of the greatest LCS teams of all time, but they're not getting pushed enough to really show. They can screw around and pick as many, fun comps as they want because they know confidently that when push comes to sub, they're going to make it to Worlds. They're probably going to finish number 1 in the split. It just feels like we're in such a boring and bland space with the LCS, and there's nothing really exciting. The only thing really exciting is that, we have some few good rookies. Tactical, whom contracts coming back is pretty fun. But overall, if I was selling this to, a new fan, like, oh, hey, a new fan's like, I really like League of Legends. I watched Worlds for the first time last year. What league should I watch? I'm like, I'm not going to – LCS probably in top 5. They're probably getting top 5 on this. I would suggest the freaking Turkish league before the LCS at this point. Like, I really like the excitement level for me when it comes to LCS. And I think it also has to do with the online play. Like, I'm usually on the ground interviewing these guys, watching from arena. I think the online play plus the complacency, and the lack of play where it does feel like some of these teams just give away wins, whereas they don't even try, where they will just give everything up. And probably one of the only good points of the season for me has been Freak's casting, where Freak just keeps dunking on every team that just gives away free wins, and he's really kind of his casting this split has been really fun to listen to. But outside of that, it's just bland. LCS has just become really bland, and they do some good animations and some good production stuff, and I do like their teases that from time to time, but it just seems to like the same old. Like, how many times can we hear package C9 versus TSM, right? How many times can we hear package, oh, it's CLG versus TSM, this rivalry has sucked for 5 years, maybe this time it will become real again. It never does. It's the same storylines over and over and over and over again. It's become so bland, and it's so sad. Maybe if Cloud9 goes to Worlds, maybe if Team Liquid goes to Worlds, and they can make quarterfinals, make a semifinals run, it'll rejuvenate the space, but it's just so bland. And I know it's online play and everything, but I'm just so disinterested, and it sucks because I do love North America. Like, I want these North American teams to win. I want them to go to Worlds. I want a North American team to lift the Summoner's Cup like Ember prophesied so many years ago. But right now, even me, someone who can make up the most optimistic analogies and predictions of all time, I'm just in a sad state, Art. I'm a sad state, Emily. I'm a sad state, Jacob. I'm just going to cover the TCL. The LCS is bland.
I'll be your translator, Tyler. We can go together. I'll be your translator, man.
We have a built-in Turkish translator.
Yeah, I got you.
So I want to say this, right? So, props to Riot for changing the overlays and the production this split. It is better than it was last. In terms of design, not in terms of function. So, the LCS broadcast, to me, screams, "We are professionals and we want to be sports," but they don't understand their audience. Like the whole like dome thing that they do to like make the like overlay a little bit more interesting for the analysts. Like, yeah, that's cool. Like that animation, whoever built that in Cinema 4D or 4D or Cinema 4D, like great job, right? Like it's effective, but like, and it's clean, but it's not necessarily interesting. The one other thing, and it's good we have B-roll on the screen right now. I hate the top bar with the statistics. It's awful. The kills are like so unnoticeable in particular, and like I know kills are not a relevant stat in terms of like high tier analysis, right? But like to a fan, to a basic fan, kills actually matter a lot, and they're not very noticeable at all right now. Like you see them next to the sword, but like they're not like they don't stick out to you like they used to. And so like yeah, like it looks clean, it looks better, but functionally it is not better. And like meanwhile the LEC is like all over the place, and I like loved everything they did around Pride this past weekend. The fact that like they had all the various different like all the sets were changed around to be like Pride flag themed, colored. Like that was awesome. Like I like the fact that like the LEC takes these like creative swings. It's been one of my like favorite things about 2019 and 2020 in League. But like yeah, the LCS, like it's cleaner, it's more 2020 style, but it's like actually like the assets themselves are actually really boring and awful.
So I will say regarding the dome is much more appealing to sponsors and and also like the Emmy Award nomination committee than the actual hardcore League of Legends fan. Right?
I also think that, so like I have a few gameplay reasons why LCS is boring. But for the broadcast, like I don't necessarily disagree with what you're saying, Jacob, but I also think that one thing that does have to be brought up is that because of the current state of COVID-19 in the US, they are given the least amount of leeway of all broadcast teams right now. LCK and LPL are both played in studio with players without audiences. And then LEC has the outside of the one scare they had where they did bring everything back and did it from everyone's homes. They have been holding most of the actual production at the studio itself, although teams are still in their gaming houses. So I think that's one thing that does have to be brought up when criticizing the LCS broadcast. I don't actually disagree with a lot of what you're saying, but I do think that's a necessary point of context. For play style, I think Tyler touched upon one of the things that has bothered me about North America for so long. And I actually ask a lot of Korean and European players, and they can never give me an actual answer as to why NA teams play so passively. And their default is always to play incredibly passively and wait for their opponents to make mistakes. It's a very like traditional quote unquote style of play. It's also a very boring one to watch, especially if, and no offense, like North American players, because I think these players could go boot camp on a better server than North America and still have the mechanical skill to go up against anyone in the world. But the problem is that they're stuck on any server. So you still don't have like the dazzling mechanical displays that you will get from even teams that play passively in like LCK, for example. We've brought up this as a problem that LCK teams have as well. I think that one of the things that North American teams have always struggled with is having an identity outside of that, which is actually why, like, yes, C9 are experimenting, but one of the reasons I liked their composition is because it was interesting, right? Like, that's still a composition where it's like a press R, we're all going in, it's going to be this bombastic 5v5, it's going to look really great. It's relying on the mechanical skill that we know our players have. And I really liked it, despite the fact that they misexecuted it, right? Like, I want them to keep doing stuff like that because they can. And it's the only way that they're going to be able to continue to improve in a region that, to Tyler's point, is not pushing them very, very much, right? And I think, like, when you see even, like, lower tier LPL teams, for example, since LPL is the region that I watch the most games of by virtue of the fact there are 17 teams, you have these like weird play styles that develop, or you have teams just trying to test their own mechanical prowess. in 1v1s and 2v2s across the map. And we don't see teams taking those chances in NA. And we hear about them taking those chances in scrims, but we don't see that ever translate to actual LCS play. So that's something I want to bring up in terms of why North America continues to be boring. I think that is another reason.